Hi everyone, Adam Kirtley, chaplain here at Whitman College. I hope this message finds you well. Today is April 2nd, so this is the fourth consecutive week I've put together one of these small video reflections. Can't quite believe it's been a month. It feels like it's just started. It also feels like it's been a year. Time seems to be simultaneously speeding up and slowing down. This week I've been reflecting on a story about 15 years ago. So my daughter Ava is about to turn 15 years old, and about 15 years ago, she came to the world a little bit earlier than she was supposed to. Everything ultimately was fine, but those first several weeks were complicated, and for my wife and me, they were particularly frightening, and we spent several weeks up at a neonatal intensive care unit in Spokane. And I remember that while I was there, I received a phone call and a voicemail from a dear friend of mine in Walla Walla, and the message basically said, "Adam, when you get back to town, let's go out for a beer and we can talk about Ava, or we can talk about anything but Ava." And I just remember being so incredibly, feeling so incredibly supported by such a simple message, because basically what he was doing was saying that he was going to offer sort of a radical acceptance of whatever I had to bring to that moment. And I'll admit that at that time I was grieving. I think the loss of how I thought early parenthood was going to be. I was frightened. I was frustrated. So there was a sense in which I didn't know what I was going to bring to the moment, and with this friend of mine, he was saying it didn't matter. No matter where I was on that sort of journey in those difficult, frightening days, he was going to hold that with me, and I've carried that as a model for how to be with people in their time of need, in the midst of their suffering. This week, next week will mark the beginning of two very important weeks in the lives of two of the world's great religious traditions. Jews around the world will observe Passover, and of course Passover is a time when the Jewish community will gather together to remember and retell a story of the ancient Israelites' bondage and captivity, escape and exile. And Christians will reflect upon the story of the last several days of the life of Jesus, in which he was betrayed and arrested and tortured and killed. And the thing that I think is particularly important about these stories in these times is that in neither case does either tradition or does either story shy away from human suffering. These stories are not about separating human beings from the pain of the human reality. They are rather about sort of walking in the midst of the darkness. They're walking with and working out their relationship with their God in the midst of pain. Christians, of course, have Easter, but this week isn't about Easter, and to me, I find there to be something powerful about that. I think there's something more relatable to the fact, relatable to the lives that we lead. Had we just gotten to the Easter bit, I think we would have missed a really critical and important part of the story. I'll admit that I'm having a little bit of frustration and annoyance by some of what I see come through on my social media from some people of faith. Certain, I don't mean to be too inflammatory here, but certain religious platitudes like this is all part of God's plan, or God won't give you any more than you can handle, or frankly even praying to God that we should somehow be spared from this, feels to me like it misses a really important point of the faith journey. I think that there is comfort to be found in community and in tradition. There's comfort to be found in words and in friendship. And as a person of faith, I think there's even comfort to be found in faith. But it's not about sort of saying that, well, we as people who live in the United States, or we as people of faith, should somehow be exempt from these difficult days. The word compassion means to suffer with. It's not to remove the suffering. And to that extent, it sort of relates back to the story of my buddy who reached out to me. It's kind of funny. He's a card-carrying, devout atheist. So I'm sure it annoys him to no end that he provided me with one of my life's most important spiritual moments. But that's my invitation to you. In the midst of these difficult days where we're encountering more and more stories of individuals whose lives are being upended and challenged by this pandemic, to the extent that you're able to look upon those stories and to consider ways that you might stand with them in the midst of their dark moments, rather than feeling helpless to remove the dark moments. That's not the call on our lives in this moment, I don't think. So that's my invitation to you. I hope that you are well. I know that there are so many folks. We're all facing challenges to varying degrees. My heart is with you. Please don't hesitate to be in touch with me. Take care of yourselves and each other, and I do hope to see you around soon.